The council meeting was like every other meeting that happened in the Great Hall of Zenith Prime Station. Representatives from 47 different alien species sat in their designated seats, talking about the same things they always talked about. Trade agreements, border disputes, mining rights in dead star systems. The usual business that kept the Galactic Council running, slow and steady as it had been for the last 1,000 years. The Krell ambassador stood at the center platform, his thick gray skin gleaming under the chamber lights. He was making a long speech about deuterium extraction in the Outer Rim. Most of the other ambassadors looked bored. Some were checking their data pads. Others whispered to their aides. This was normal. Everything was normal. Then the doors exploded. The blast threw chunks of metal across the polished floor. Smoke poured into the chamber. Every representative jumped to their feet. Security guards grabbed their weapons and rushed toward the entrance. Alarm systems started blaring throughout the station. 3 figures walked through the smoke. They wore armor that was scorched black in places and covered in stains. Blue blood. Green blood. Dark purple blood. The armor plates were dented and cracked. Burn marks covered their shoulders and chest pieces. These were not people coming from a peaceful mission. Commander Jake Morrison stepped into the light first. He was tall and broad-shouldered, moving with the careful steps of someone who had been fighting for hours and was not quite done yet. His face was hard and his eyes were cold. Blood spattered his visor. He carried his helmet under one arm and a small data chip in his other hand. Behind him came Lieutenant Amy Cooper. She was shorter but moved like a trained fighter. Her blonde hair was tied back tight. Blood streaked across her cheek. Her rifle hung from a strap on her back, the barrel still warm enough that the air shimmered around it. She scanned the room with the eyes of someone expecting another fight. Sergeant Ben Hayes came last. He was built like a mountain and carried a heavy weapon that most species would need 2 people to lift. His armor had a long slash across the chest plate where something sharp had tried to cut through. He had not bothered to wipe the blood off his gloves. The chamber went completely silent. Even the alarm system seemed to quiet down. Every eye in the room locked onto the 3 humans standing in the doorway. The supreme arbiter of the council rose from his high seat. His name was Krilthar, and he belonged to the Vex species. He looked like a giant insect with too many legs and eyes that moved independently of each other. His voice came out in clicks and whistles that the translation devices turned into standard language. What is the meaning of this? Who dares interrupt a council session with violence? Jake Morrison walked forward. His boots left red and blue footprints on the white marble floor. Each step echoed in the silent chamber. He did not look afraid. He did not look apologetic. He looked like a man who had just finished a hard job and was not interested in wasting time. The Dravix Armada, Jake said. His voice was rough and tired. The one you have been talking about for 3 weeks. The one that was going to invade council space. The one you could not decide how to handle. He held up the data chip. It has been dealt with. All 300 ships. You are welcome. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The words did not seem to make sense. The Dravix Empire was the biggest threat the Council had faced in decades. Their warships were massive. Their warriors were brutal. They had conquered 12 systems in the past year. The Council had been debating how to respond for weeks because nobody wanted to commit their fleets to what would surely be a terrible battle. Then everyone started shouting at once. The Serpentine Soth ambassador hissed and rose up on his coils. Lies. Impossible. The Dravix fleet was detected near the Helios Nebula just 2 days ago. How could you possibly? We hit them yesterday morning, Amy Cooper interrupted. She tapped her wrist computer, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the room. We tracked them through the nebula. 12 human ships against their 300. The hologram showed battle footage. Human vessels, smaller than the Dravix warships, darted through clouds of radiation and debris. They moved fast and struck hard. The tactics were aggressive, almost reckless. Ships that should have retreated instead pushed forward. Fighters that were outgunned found ways to strike at weak points. The humans fought like people who had nothing to lose. The footage showed human crews boarding Dravix ships through blown airlocks. Marines in combat armor fought through corridors against warriors twice their size. Pilots rammed their damaged fighters into enemy engines. One small human destroyer crashed directly into a Dravix carrier, taking both ships down in a massive explosion. Ben Hayes spoke up, his voice flat and hard. We lost 4 ships. 237 crew members died. But the job is done. The Dravix are running back to their home system right now. The Galactic Council watched the footage in shocked silence. These were tactics they had never seen before. This was warfare conducted with a speed and violence that went against everything their military academies taught. Ships were supposed to maintain formation. Crews were supposed to preserve their vessels. Suicide attacks were considered barbaric and inefficient, but the footage did not lie. The human fleet had torn through the Dravix armada like a blade through flesh. What should have been an impossible victory was right there on the hologram for everyone to see. Jake Morrison let the footage play for exactly 3 minutes. Then he shut it off. The chamber fell silent again. The Dravix will not bother anyone for a long time, Jake said. Their empire is broken. Their fleet is scattered. The threat is over. Supreme Arbiter Krilthar's many eyes blinked in different patterns. It was a sign of deep confusion in his species. This is not acceptable. You violated council protocols. You engaged in military action without authorization. You had no right to. We had every right. Jake cut him off. His voice got harder. We saved your lives. We did what you could not do. While you were forming committees and writing reports, the Dravix were getting ready to burn your worlds. Someone had to act. A small voice spoke from the lower seats. Ambassador Lyra of the Tauran stepped forward. She was a mammalian species with soft fur and large eyes. Her planet was in the outer rim, directly in the path of the Dravix advance. The human speaks the truth, she said quietly. My world was next. My people would be dead or enslaved right now, if not for what they did. Other voices joined hers. Representatives from border worlds stood up. Species that had been counting their days until the Dravix arrived began to speak. Their voices were full of gratitude mixed with fear and confusion. Krilthar raised several of his limbs for silence. Even so, protocols must be maintained. The Council exists to provide order to the galaxy. There must be consequences for unauthorized military action, regardless of the outcome. Amy Cooper laughed. It was not a happy sound. Consequences? We just lost a quarter of our fleet saving you. Those men and women are dead. That is consequence enough. The security forces surrounded the 3 humans within seconds. 20 guards from different species pointed weapons at them from every direction. Energy rifles hummed with charge. Plasma weapons glowed hot. The guards looked nervous. They had never seen anything like this in the council chambers before. Jake Morrison did not even glance at the weapons. He kept his eyes on Supreme Arbiter Krilthar. Amy Cooper shifted her weight slightly, ready to move if she needed to. Ben Hayes crossed his arms and waited. None of them looked worried about being surrounded. Ambassador Prill of the Soth slithered forward. His scales were bright red, which meant he was angry. The Soth were known for their cold logic and careful planning. Prill did not believe in acting without complete information. This is absurd, Prill hissed. The Dravix Empire fielded 300 warships. Each ship carries 500 warriors trained from birth for combat. Their weapons can crack planets. Their shields can withstand sustained fire from our best cruisers. You expect us to believe that 12 human ships destroyed them all? Not destroyed, Amy corrected. Neutralized. Big difference. About 60 of their ships are still functional. They just do not want to fight anymore. She brought up more data on her wrist computer. New footage appeared in the holographic display. This time it showed the aftermath of the battle. Dravix ships limping away from the nebula, escape pods scattered across space, debris fields where proud warships used to be. And in the middle of it all, 8 human vessels holding position. Battered but still operational. The Dravix are not stupid, Amy continued. Once we took out their command carrier and their fleet admiral, the rest lost their nerve. We gave them a choice. Run or die. Most of them chose to run. Ben Hayes pulled up another display. We captured their fleet admiral. His name is Vrok the Destroyer. He has personally led the conquest of 8 systems. Won 400 battles. Never been defeated. Ben smiled without humor. He is in our brig right now. Wants to know if we accept honorable surrender. Seems confused about why we are not killing him. The council chamber fell silent again. Vrok the Destroyer was famous across the galaxy. Children of a dozen species were told stories about him, to teach them about the horrors of war. He was supposed to be unbeatable. The idea that he was sitting in a human prison cell did not make sense. How? The question came from Ambassador Dreth of the Vorlon Collective. He was an older being, one of the longest-serving council members. Your ships are smaller. Your weapons are less advanced according to our scans. Your species has only had faster-than-light travel for 50 years. How did you defeat an empire that has conquered for centuries? Jake Morrison looked at Dreth. There was respect in that look. At least this ambassador was asking the right questions, instead of just shouting denials. We fight different, Jake said. Your military tactics are based on minimizing losses. You want to preserve ships and crews. You fight carefully. You retreat when things get dangerous. You value survival over victory. He gestured at himself and his team. We are human. We fight to win. If that means ramming a ship into an enemy carrier, we do it. If that means boarding actions against superior numbers, we do it. If that means pilots staying in damaged fighters instead of ejecting, we do it. We do whatever it takes. That is barbaric, someone shouted from the upper seats. That is effective, Jake shot back. You want to know the real difference? When a human commander gives an order, the crew follows it. No debate. No committee meetings. No waiting for approval from 3 different departments. We see a target and we hit it. Fast and hard. Amy pulled up tactical displays showing the battle from multiple angles. We also used the nebula radiation to mask our approach. Your ships have better shields, but they also show up on sensors like bonfires. Our ships have less protection, but we know how to hide. We got inside their formation before they even knew we were there. The displays showed human ships emerging from radiation clouds at point-blank range. Dravik's warships tried to turn their weapons, but the humans were already too close. Torpedoes slammed into engine blocks. Railgun rounds punched through shield generators. One human destroyer flew directly under a Dravik's battleship and fired every weapon straight up into its belly. Shields work great against long-range attacks, Amy explained. Not so great when someone is close enough to shake hands. We got close and we stayed close. Made their big guns useless. Ben brought up footage of the boarding actions. Human Marines in powered armor cut through airlocks and poured into Dravik's ships. The fighting was brutal and close. The Dravik's warriors were bigger and stronger, but the humans moved faster and shot straighter. They used teamwork and tactics that turned every corridor into a killing ground. Your warriors fight for honor and glory, Ben said. Ours fight to survive and to protect each other. Big difference when things get ugly. One clip showed a human Marine named Kevin Turner. His fighter had been crippled by enemy fire. Instead of ejecting, he aimed his dying ship at a Dravik's carrier and fired his engines to maximum. The carrier tried to shoot him down, but he jinked and weaved through their fire. At the last second, he armed every weapon on his ship and crashed directly into their main reactor. The explosion tore the carrier in half. 1,500 Dravik's died instantly. So did Kevin Turner. He was 23 years old, Jake said quietly. First real combat mission. Could have ejected and been picked up by our ships. Instead, he saw a chance to take out a major target. And he took it. The council members stared at the footage. This kind of sacrifice was beyond their understanding. Most species valued individual life above military objectives. The idea of deliberately crashing your ship into an enemy was something only desperate or insane beings did. You are right, Ambassador Dreth said slowly. You do fight differently. The question is whether the galaxy wants warriors like you among us. What you call effectiveness, others might call madness. Jake nodded. Fair point. But here is the thing. The Draviks were 2 days away from Council space. Your fleets were still mobilizing. Your committees were still debating rules of engagement. Your politicians were arguing about who would pay for the defense. In another week, maybe 2, the Draviks would have hit your border worlds. How many would have died while you were still making plans? He looked around the chamber at all the different species. We are offering you a choice. You can keep doing things the way you have always done them. Slow and careful and safe. And you can hope that the next threat gives you enough time to respond. Or you can let us help. We bring speed. We bring action. We bring results. You bring violence, Krilthar said. The Supreme Arbiter had been quiet, watching and listening. Now he spoke with careful words. The Council was founded to move beyond the age of warfare. We seek peaceful solutions to conflicts. We negotiate. We compromise. What you are describing is a return to barbarism. Barbarism saved your lives, Amy said bluntly. While you were seeking peaceful solutions, the Draviks were loading weapons. Sometimes violence is the only answer. Sometimes you need to fight or die. Pretending otherwise does not make it less true. Jake held up the data chip again. This contains complete intelligence on the Dravik's fleet structure. Ship locations. Weapons capabilities. Supply lines. Command structure. Everything. We are giving it to you for free. Use it however you want. Build defenses. Plan strategies. We do not care. He tossed the chip to Krilthar. The Supreme Arbiter caught it with one of his many limbs. But understand this, Jake continued. We did not ask permission before we hit the Draviks. We did not wait for Council approval. We saw a threat and we dealt with it, and we will do it again if we have to, with or without your blessing. The chamber erupted in angry voices again. But this time there were other voices. The debate went on for hours. The 3 humans stood in the center of the Council chamber, while representatives from 47 species argued about their fate. Some wanted to arrest them for violating Council law, others wanted to give them medals. Most were somewhere in between, confused and uncertain about what humanity represented. Ben Hayes finally sat down on the marble floor. He did not ask permission. He just found a spot and sat, his heavy weapon resting across his knees. He started cleaning blood off his armor with a cloth from his pack. Blue blood, green blood, dark purple blood. Each stain told a story of close combat and brutal fighting. Nobody tried to stop him. The security guards watched but did not interfere. There was something about the way the humans carried themselves that made others hesitate. These were not diplomats playing political games. These were warriors who had just come from hell and were too tired to care about ceremony. Amy Cooper kept monitoring her wrist computer. Every few minutes, she would check in with the human fleet still positioned near the Helios Nebula. 8 ships holding position in hostile space, ready to extract their people if the Council turned violent. She made no effort to hide what she was doing. Let them see that humans had backup plans. Jake Morrison stood with his arms crossed, watching the debate unfold. He had been a soldier for 15 years before becoming a commander. He had fought in the colony wars. He had defended Earth's outer settlements against raiders. He knew how to read a room, and he could see the tides slowly turning. Ambassador Prill of the Soth was leading the opposition. His species believed in order and hierarchy. The idea of humans forcing their way onto the Council offended everything he valued. This sets a terrible precedent, Prill argued. If we reward unauthorized military action, what stops every species from taking matters into their own hands? The Council exists to prevent chaos. We cannot allow violence to determine policy. The violence already happened, countered Ambassador Lyra. The Draviks brought violence. The humans answered it. Would you prefer we had done nothing? We were preparing a response, Prill shot back. The Council fleet would have mobilized within 2 weeks. We would have handled the situation properly. 2 weeks, Jake spoke up. His voice cut through the argument. The Draviks would have hit the first border world in 5 days. 3 colonies would have burned before your fleet even left dock. How is that handling it properly? Prill turned to face him. You do not understand galactic politics, human. Everything must be done correctly. We must follow established procedures. We cannot simply attack other species because we think they are a threat. They were not a threat, Amy said. They were a certainty. They had declared war on Council space. They were coming. The only question was whether anyone would stop them. A new voice joined the debate. Ambassador Tor of the Mechlin hegemony stood up. The Mechlin were a warrior species themselves. Though they had been civilized members of the Council for 300 years, Tor was old and scarred from battles fought long ago. I fought the Draviks once, Tor said. 50 years ago when they tried to take Mechlin colonies. We barely drove them back and it cost us millions of lives. I have studied warfare for longer than these humans have been spacefaring. I have one question for them. W. He looked directly at Jake. How many of your people died taking down that Draviks carrier? The one your young pilot crashed into? Just him, Jake answered. Kevin Turner. He was the only one on that fighter. One life for a ship carrying 1,500 enemy warriors, Tor said quietly. We Mechlin would call that a glorious exchange. The highest honor. Yet I see grief in your eyes when you speak his name. Why? Jake was silent for a moment. Because Kevin Turner should be alive. He should be home with his family. He had a girl waiting for him on Earth. They were going to get married after this mission. Now she gets a flag and a medal instead. But he chose his sacrifice, Tor pressed. He made the warrior's choice. Glory and death. He made the choice because it had to be made, Jake corrected. Not for glory. Not for honor. Because people needed saving. And he was in a position to save them. That does not make his death less tragic. That does not mean we celebrate it. We mourn what we lost, and we make sure it counted for something. Tor nodded slowly. You fight like warriors but think like protectors. Interesting. Most species are one or the other. Never both. We are human, Ben said from his seat on the floor. He was still cleaning his armor. We fight when we have to. We stop when we can. We do not enjoy killing. We are just good at it. When it is necessary. Ambassador Dreth spoke again. The old Vorlan had been listening carefully to everything. Let me pose a hypothetical situation. Suppose the Council grants you this seat. Suppose we give you full authority. What would humanity do with that power? Jake straightened up. This was the real question. This was what would determine how the Council voted. First thing, we form a rapid response fleet, Jake said. Ships from different species, trained to react fast to threats. No more waiting weeks for committees to approve action. Something goes wrong. The fleet moves immediately. Who commands this fleet? Dreth asked. Best person for the job, Jake answered. Could be human. Could be Mechlin. Could be Tauran. Does not matter what species, only that they can make hard decisions quickly. Second thing, Amy added. We upgrade Council military doctrine. Your tactics are 300 years old. Ships move too slow. Communication is inefficient. You fight like you are still using projectile weapons. We teach you modern warfare. You presume to teach us? Prill hissed. Species that have fought among the stars for millennia? Yes, Amy said flatly. Because we won and you did not. We beat the Draviks in one day. How long would it have taken you? Be honest. Prill did not answer. Everyone in the chamber knew the truth. A conventional council response would have taken months. The casualties would have been massive. Entire worlds would have burned. Third thing, Jake continued. We reform how the council makes decisions about threats. Right now, you debate everything to death. Every species protects its own interests. Nothing gets done until it is too late. That stops. When lives are at stake, speed matters more than process. You are describing military dictatorship, Prill accused. You want to turn the council into a war machine. No, Jake said firmly. We want the council to be able to defend itself. Big difference. You can still debate trade agreements and mining rights all you want. But when someone declares war, When people are dying, you act fast. You fight hard. You win. Supreme Arbiter Krilthar had been silent for a long time. Now he spoke, his voice careful and measured. You paint an attractive picture, Commander Morrison. Swift action. Decisive victory. Protection for the weak. But I see a problem. He gestured at the three humans. What happens when humanity decides we are the threat? What happens when your rapid response fleet decides the Council itself is the problem? You ask for power, but you offer no checks on that power. It was a fair point. Jake had to respect that. Krilthar was not just worried about protocols, he was worried about the future. We offer ourselves as the check, Jake said. Humanity does not want to rule the galaxy. We just want to protect it. But if you need guarantees, here is one. Any council member can call for a vote to remove humanity from our seat. Simple majority. You decide we are abusing power. You kick us out. We will accept that judgment. And if you refuse to leave? Krilthar asked. Then you were right not to trust us, Jake admitted. But that has not happened yet. You are judging us on what we might do instead of what we have done. We saved lives. We stopped a threat. We are offering to help make sure it does not happen again. Take the offer. Or do not. Your choice. The chamber fell quiet. The arguments had run their course. Now it came down to a decision. Trust the humans or send them away. Accept change or cling to old ways. Ambassador Lyra stood up again. I call for a vote. Grant humanity a permanent council seat with full authority. Hands and appendages and tentacles rose across the chamber. Not everyone, not even a majority at first, but enough. The border worlds voted yes. Species that valued action voted yes. A few who simply recognized reality voted yes. Krilthar watched the count. His many eyes blinked in complex patterns. The vote is not yet decided. We need a clear majority. The swearing-in ceremony was scheduled for 2 days later. Jake Morrison refused to change out of his blood-stained armor. When council officials protested, he looked at them with cold eyes and said one thing. Let them remember what it cost. So Jake stood before the council in the same armor he had worn during the battle. The blood had dried to a dark brown color. The scorch marks and dents had not been repaired. He looked like a warrior, not a diplomat. And that was exactly the point. Amy Cooper and Ben Hayes stood behind him in their own damaged armor. The ceremony was brief and formal. Krilthar administered the oath. Jake repeated the words without emotion. He was now officially Earth's first Galactic Council ambassador. The title felt strange after years of being called Commander. When the ceremony ended, Jake got to work immediately. He had not come to Zenith Prime to make speeches or attend fancy dinners. He had come to change things. The first proposal was the Rapid Response Fleet. Jake presented it to the council 3 hours after being sworn in. The plan was simple. 20 ships from different species would form a joint task force. They would train together, operate together, and respond to threats together. No more waiting for individual species to commit forces. No more political delays. The fleet needs a commander, Ambassador Dreth said during the presentation. Who do you propose? Captain Greg Palmer, Jake answered. Human, 15 years combat experience. He commanded one of the ships that hit the Dravix, lost half his crew but completed his mission. He knows what he is doing. A human commander for a council fleet? Prill objected. This proves our concerns. You use your position to put your own people in power. I am putting the best person in command, Jake shot back. You want someone else? Fine. Give me a name. Show me a captain from any species who has recent combat experience against a major threat. Someone who has actually won a battle in the last decade. Prill fell silent. Most council species had not fought a real war in years. Their military officers were administrators and peacekeepers, not combat veterans. Tor of the Mechlin spoke up. I propose Captain Venn of the Mechlin 3rd Fleet as second in command. He fought in our border conflicts. He understands warfare. The human and the Mechlin will lead together. Jake nodded. Acceptable. Captain Palmer will handle overall strategy. Captain Venn will manage fleet coordination. They work as a team. The proposal passed with moderate support. Not everyone liked it, but they could not argue against the logic. The galaxy needed a force that could respond to threats quickly. The Rapid Response Fleet was that force. Next came the training program. Amy Cooper took charge of this. She was a tactical instructor before becoming a field officer. She knew how to teach, and she knew what worked in combat. The first training session was a disaster. Ships from 7 different species showed up at the designated coordinates near Jupiter. They had different communication systems, different weapon types, different tactical doctrines. Some species thought defense was most important. Others valued speed. Nobody agreed on anything. Amy watched the chaos unfold on her command screen and sighed. This was going to take work. Attention all ships, she broadcast. This is Lieutenant Cooper. We are going to run a simple exercise. Enemy force will jump into the system. Your job is to intercept and neutralize. Begin when ready. She activated the simulation. Holographic enemy ships appeared on long-range sensors. They were based on Dravik signatures, fast-moving and heavily armed. The Council ships immediately started arguing about formation. The Vorlon wanted to form a defensive sphere. The Krell insisted on a line formation. The Tauran ships broke off to scout. Nobody was coordinating. The simulated enemy ships tore through them in minutes. Every Council vessel was marked as destroyed or disabled. Amy reset the simulation. Again. This time try actually working together. They failed 4 more times. By the 5th attempt, the crews were frustrated and angry. Good. Frustration meant they were ready to learn. You want to know why you keep dying? Amy asked. Because you are flying like 7 separate fleets. You are not coordinating. You are not communicating. You are getting destroyed. Because you refuse to act as one unit. She brought up footage from the Dravik's battle. Watch how humans fight. See how our ships move? Every vessel knows what the others are doing. We share targeting data. We cover each other's weak spots. We fight as one weapon with 8 parts. The training continued for weeks. Slowly, painfully, the Council ships started to improve. They learned to share sensor data. They practiced coordinated attacks. They stopped arguing about formations and started trusting each other. Captain Palmer arrived to take command after 2 weeks. He was a lean man with gray hair and sharp eyes. He had lost an arm in the Dravik's battle, and now wore a mechanical replacement. He did not talk much, but when he gave orders, people listened. Captain Venn of the Mechlin was already waiting. He was massive even for his species, covered in old battle scars. He and Palmer sized each other up for a moment. Then Venn grinned, showing too many teeth. I hear you rammed a cruiser into a Dravik's battleship, Venn said. Seemed like a good idea at the time, Palmer replied. We will get along fine. They did. Palmer handled overall strategy, while Venn managed the complex logistics of keeping 7 species working together. Between them, they turned a collection of random ships into something that resembled a real fleet. Back on Zenith Prime, Jake was fighting different battles, political ones. The Council was full of species that had been comfortable for too long. They did not like change. They definitely did not like humans pushing for reforms. But Jake kept pushing. He introduced new communication protocols so messages could get through faster. He streamlined the approval process for military deployments. He fought for intelligence sharing between species. Every change faced resistance. Every reform had to be negotiated and compromised. It was exhausting work, and Jake hated it. He was a soldier, not a politician. But this was the job now, and he would do it right. Ben Hayes worked on something different. He was setting up training programs for ground forces. Marines and soldiers from different species learning human tactics, close quarters combat, boarding actions, urban warfare. The first trainees were skeptical. They were career soldiers from species with proud military traditions. They did not think humans had anything to teach them. Ben changed their minds in the first week. He ran them through combat scenarios that pushed them to their limits. He showed them techniques that their own instructors had never taught. He treated them all the same, whether they were massive Krell warriors or small Tauran scouts. Size does not matter in a corridor, Ben told them. Speed matters. Accuracy matters. Teamwork matters. You learn those things and you will survive. You rely on size and strength alone. You will die. He proved it by sparring with the largest Krell in the group. The warrior was twice Ben's size and covered in natural armor. He thought the match would be easy. Ben put him on the floor in under 30 seconds. Your armor is good against bullets, Ben explained while helping the Krell up. Not so good against someone who knows where your joints are. Every species has weak points. Learn them. Exploit them. Win. The training programs expanded. More ships joined the rapid response fleet. More reforms passed through the council. Slowly, day by day, humanity was changing how the galaxy operated. Not everyone was happy about it. The Soth Empire formally complained about human influence. Several species reduced their cooperation with council initiatives. There were protests on some worlds about human militarism. Jake knew this would happen. Change always created backlash. The question was whether the benefits would outweigh the costs. 3 months after the bloodied arrival, the answer came. A distress call reached Zenith Prime from the Outer Rim. Pirates were attacking a trade convoy near the Helios system. Not a major threat, but a real one. Ships were being destroyed. People were dying. The old council would have debated for days, formed committees, discussed jurisdiction and authority. By the time they acted, the convoy would be gone. The new council was different. Jake received the distress call and immediately contacted Captain Palmer. You are authorized to respond, Jake said. Rapid response fleet is go. Weed. Palmer did not waste time with questions or confirmations. Understood. We are jumping in 10 minutes. The fleet moved. 20 ships from 7 species working together like they had trained. They jumped into the Helios system and found the pirates scattered among the convoy wreckage. The fight lasted 11 minutes. The pirates were used to facing lone security ships or slow cargo haulers. They were not ready for a coordinated military response. Half of them tried to run. The other half died trying to fight. Not a single council ship was lost. 3 were damaged, but all crews survived. The convoy's remaining vessels were saved. Hundreds of lives protected. Palmer's report was brief. Mission successful. Returning to station. That simple report changed everything. The council had proven it could act quickly and effectively. The reforms worked. Human methods worked. The galaxy took notice. Jake stood in his quarters that night looking at casualty reports. 0 deaths. That was the number that mattered. 0 humans killed. 0 aliens killed. Everyone came home. Amy found him there an hour later. You should sleep. We have another council session tomorrow. Tomorrow they will argue about something stupid, Jake predicted. Trade routes or mining rights or some complaint about protocols. Back to normal politics. Is that so bad? Amy asked. We changed things. The fleet works. The training works. Maybe we can step back now. Let the council handle the boring stuff. Jake shook his head. This is just the start. One pirate raid does not prove the system works. We need months of success. Years, maybe. We need to show that cooperation and speed and action are better than the old 6 months had passed since 3 humans walked into the council chambers covered in blood. 6 months of hard work, political fights, and slow progress. The galaxy was different now. Not completely transformed, but moving in a new direction. Jake Morrison stood in the council chambers wearing actual diplomatic clothes for once. Clean suit, no armor, no weapons. He looked almost respectable if you ignored the scars on his face and the hardness in his eyes. Some things did not wash away with blood. Today was important. The council was voting on a formal military alliance treaty. Every member species would commit forces to mutual defense. The rapid response fleet would become permanent. Training standards would be unified. It was everything Jake had been working toward. It was also the moment when everything could fall apart. Ambassador Prill of the South had been quiet lately. Too quiet. Jake knew the Serpentine diplomat was planning something. Species like the South did not accept defeat easily. They waited and schemed and struck when the time was right. The vote began. One by one, species cast their votes on the holographic display. Green for yes, red for no. The tally climbed steadily. Most border worlds voted yes immediately. They had seen the rapid response fleet in action. They knew the value of quick military response. The core worlds were split. Some voted yes, others hesitated. The count was close. Too close. Then Prill stood up. The Soth Empire wishes to speak before casting our vote. Here it comes, Jake thought. Whatever play Prill had been planning. 6 months ago, humanity forced their way onto this council through military action, Prill began. His voice was calm and reasonable. We were told they would make us stronger. We were told their methods would protect the galaxy. I opposed this then, and I have watched carefully since. He brought up data on the main display. In 6 months, the Rapid Response Fleet has conducted 17 operations. Pirate raids, border disputes, smuggler interdiction. All successful. 0 casualties among Council forces. The numbers are impressive. Jake waited. There had to be more, but numbers do not tell the full story, Prill continued. These operations were all minor threats, small problems. The fleet has not faced a real challenge. We have not seen how humanity responds when things go badly. When people die, when victory is not certain. You want us to fail? Amy Cooper asked from her seat. She was now a permanent liaison between the fleet and the council. I want us to be realistic, Prill answered. Humanity sold us on speed and action. But what happens when speed leads to mistakes? What happens when action causes disasters? We have given you power based on one battle against the Draviks. That is not enough. Other voices murmured agreement. Prill had found the weak point in human support. Many species had voted for the changes because they worked in small situations. But they still feared what might happen in a major crisis. Jake stood up. You are right. The chamber went silent. Nobody expected him to agree. You are absolutely right, Jake repeated. We have not faced a major threat since the Draviks. The fleet has handled small problems. That does not prove we can handle big ones. So let me tell you what happens when things go wrong. When people die. When victory is not certain. He brought up his own display, footage from Earth's history, wars and battles and disasters. This is humanity. We have been fighting each other for thousands of years. World wars, nuclear weapons, extinction-level threats. We know what failure looks like because we have failed before. Images flashed across the screen. Cities in ruins, soldiers dying, mistakes and tragedies and horrible losses. We learned from every failure, Jake said. We adapted. We got better. And we kept fighting. Because giving up was not an option. Because protecting our people mattered more than protecting our pride. He switched to more recent footage. The colony wars. Human settlements fighting off raiders. Desperate battles where defeat meant death. We have lost before. We will lose again. The question is not whether we are perfect. The question is whether we learn from mistakes and keep trying. Ben Hayes stood up from his seat. He had been working with ground forces for months, barely attending council sessions. But he was here today. Last month I trained a platoon of Tauran Marines, Ben said. Small species. Not strong. Most people think they cannot fight. I taught them boarding tactics and close combat. 3 weeks ago, pirates hit a Tauran colony ship. Those Marines I trained were on board. He brought up after-action reports. The pirates had superior numbers and weapons. Should have been a massacre. Instead, those Tauran Marines held them off for 6 hours until the fleet arrived. They used everything I taught them. Teamwork, tactics, courage. They saved 700 civilians. Ben looked around the chamber. 2 Marines died. Their names were Kip and Sarah. I knew them. I trained them. I told their families what they did. It hurt, but they won. They saved lives. That is what matters. The chamber was quiet. Species that had been skeptical were listening now. Captain Palmer's voice came over the communication system. He was out on patrol but had been monitoring the vote. "This is Captain Palmer. I want to say something about failure and success." His image appeared on the display. The mechanical arm was visible as he gestured. "I lost this arm in the Dravix battle. Lost half my crew, too. We made mistakes. I made mistakes. Pushed too hard. Got people killed who might have survived if I was smarter." He paused. "But we won. And I learned from those mistakes. The fleet I command now is better because of what we learned fighting the Dravix. Every operation we run, we improve. Every mission, we get better. That is the human way. Learn and adapt and never stop trying." Ambassador Lyra stood up. "The Tauren cast our vote. Yes. We trust humanity because they have earned that trust. Not by being perfect. By being effective." Tor of the Mechlon rose next. "The Mechlon vote yes. We understand that warriors make mistakes. What matters is how they respond to those mistakes. Humanity responds with learning and improvement. That is honorable." More votes came in. The tally shifted green. Species that had been hesitant were convinced by the honesty. By the admission that humans were not perfect but were trying to be better. Prill watched his opposition crumble, but he was not done yet. Very moving speeches. "But I have one more question. What happens when humanity decides the Council is the problem? You have a fleet now. You have loyalty from multiple species. You have power. What stops you from using that power against us?" It was the same question Krilthar had asked 6 months ago. The fear that humanity would become tyrants. Jake walked to the center of the chamber. "You want to know what stops us? Our own people. Earth does not want an empire. We have colonies on a dozen worlds. We have billions of humans living their lives. They did not send us here to conquer. They sent us here to protect." He pulled up communication logs. "Every week I send reports back to Earth. Everything we do here is public. Our people know about the fleet, about the training, about the reforms. If we abuse that power, they will remove us. Our own government will recall us and appoint someone else," Amy added. "We also built in safeguards. The fleet has ships from 7 species. If humanity goes rogue, those ships can refuse orders. Captain Ven of the Mechlon has equal authority with Captain Palmer. This is not a human fleet. It is a council fleet with human leadership. And if that is not enough," Jake finished, "you can vote us out anytime. Simple majority removes our council seat. We agreed to that from the start. The power you fear is power you can take back whenever you want." Prill had no response to that. The Soth had been looking for a reason to oppose humanity. But every argument had an answer. Every fear had a safeguard. Supreme Arbiter Krilthar spoke for the first time during the debate. "The Soth will cast their vote. How does the Empire decide?" Prill was silent for a long moment. Then he hissed softly. "The Soth vote yes. Conditional approval. We will support the treaty, but we will watch carefully. Any abuse of power will be met with immediate opposition." "Fair enough," Jake said. The final tally appeared. The treaty passed with 70% approval. The Rapid Response Fleet was now permanent. The reforms were official. The new way of doing things had been accepted by the majority of the galaxy. Jake felt tired. 6 months of constant work had led to this moment. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it just felt like more responsibility. More work ahead. More challenges to face. That evening, Jake found himself back in his quarters. Amy and Ben joined him. They sat in silence for a while. 3 humans far from Earth who had changed the galaxy through stubbornness and violence and determination. "We did it," Amy finally said. "Everything we wanted. The fleet. The reforms. The treaty. We actually did it. We started it," Jake corrected. "Now comes the hard part. Making it work long term. Proving it was worth it. Ben pulled up casualty reports from the past 6 months. 0 deaths. 17 operations. 0 deaths. That is the number that matters. Nobody died because we were too slow to act. Nobody died because committees could not agree. We saved lives. It was true. The reforms had worked. Response times were down from weeks to hours. Threats were handled quickly and efficiently. The galaxy was safer than it had been in decades. Do you think about them? Amy asked quietly. The ones we lost at the Dravix battle? Every day. Jake admitted. Kevin Turner. Lisa Grant. All 237 of them. I think about what they gave up. So we could be here. They would be proud, Ben said. We did what we said we would do. We made their sacrifice count. Jake hoped that was true. He hoped the crew members who died fighting the Dravix would approve of what humanity had built. A fleet that protected people. A council that could act quickly. A galaxy that valued action over endless debate. Outside the window, ships moved through space around Zenith Prime. Human ships. Mechlin ships. Tauran ships. 7 species working together under a unified command. The Rapid Response Fleet on patrol, keeping the peace, ready to respond if needed. It was not perfect. There were still political fights. Still species that resented human influence. Still problems that needed solving. But it was better than it had been. Better than endless committee meetings while people died. 3 months later, the fleet faced its first real test. A Krell colony was attacked by unknown raiders. Not pirates. Something bigger. Something organized. The distress call reached Zenith Prime at midnight station time. Jake was awakened by the emergency alert. He pulled up the data while getting dressed. This was bad. The raiders had heavy weapons and military-grade ships. This was not a police action. This was war. He contacted Captain Palmer immediately. You seeing this? Already moving, Palmer replied. Fleet is jumping in 20 minutes. This is going to be ugly. Do what you have to do, Jake said. Save the colony. The fleet jumped. 20 ships against an unknown force attacking a population of 2 million Krell. Jake watched the battle unfold from Zenith Prime. It was nothing like the clean operations from the past months. The raiders were good. They had proper tactics and coordination. They gave ground slowly and made the fleet pay for every meter. Ships were damaged. Crews were injured. For the first time since formation, the Rapid Response Fleet was in a real fight. Captain Ven's ship took heavy damage, protecting civilian transports. Captain Palmer pushed his forces hard, maybe too hard, trying to save everyone. The battle lasted 4 hours. In the end, the colony was saved. The raiders were destroyed or driven off. But the cost was higher than before. 3 ships heavily damaged. 47 crew members killed from different species, hundreds more injured. It was the fleet's first defeat by their own standards. They had always brought everyone home before. Not this time. The council erupted in debates about the casualties. Some species blamed human tactics, others defended the fleet's actions. The arguments were loud and angry. Jake let them argue for 1 day. Then he stood before the council and told the truth. 47 people died, saving 2 million. That is not a defeat. That is victory. Tragic victory. Painful victory. But victory. He listed every name. Every species. Every sacrifice. These crew members knew the risks. They chose to serve anyway. They died protecting people they never met. That is not failure. That is heroism. The council fell silent. Jake was right, and they knew it. War meant casualties. Protection meant sacrifice. The fleet had done exactly what it was designed to do. Captain Palmer and Captain Ven returned to Zenith Prime 3 days later. Both looked exhausted. Both had lost crew members they cared about. But both stood tall when they gave their reports. The mission was successful, Palmer stated. We will learn from our mistakes and do better next time. The fleet performed well, Ven added. We honored our dead by saving the living. The galaxy learned an important lesson that day. Humanity's way was not perfect. People still died. Mistakes still happened. But the new system worked. When it mattered most, the fleet had been there. They had acted quickly. They had saved lives. Jake Morrison stood in the council chambers 1 year after his bloodied arrival. He wore diplomatic clothes now. The blood had long since been washed away. But everyone remembered. They remembered 3 humans who showed up covered in blood and demanded change. The galaxy was different now. Better. Not perfect, but better. And humanity had proven they deserved their place among the stars. Not through diplomacy or trade or cultural exchange. Through sacrifice and determination, and the willingness to fight when fighting was necessary. The age of endless debate was over. The age of action had arrived. And humanity had shown the galaxy how to walk that path. Jake looked out at the assembled representatives. Species from across the galaxy. Different cultures. Different values, all working together now, because 3 humans had refused to let others die while politicians talked. It had been worth it. Every sacrifice, every drop of blood, every hard decision. The galaxy was safer because humanity had arrived, and they were just getting started. Ways. So we keep fighting. We keep fighting. Just different battles now. Amy left him alone with his thoughts. Outside the window, Zenith Prime Station glowed against the stars. Dozens of species living and working together. It was supposed to represent unity and peace. Now it also represented something new. The ability to defend that peace when necessary. The willingness to fight for what mattered. The courage to act instead of debate. Humanity had brought those things to the galaxy. Not through diplomacy or trade or cultural exchange. Through blood and sacrifice and stubborn determination. Through 3 warriors who showed up covered in blood and demanded to be heard. The galaxy was changing. And humanity was making sure it changed for the better. Tor of the Mechlin hegemony stood. His people had been silent until now, watching and judging. The Mechlin vote in favor. These humans understand warfare. They understand sacrifice. They will make the council stronger. That changed things. The Mechlin carried significant influence. Other species started shifting their votes. Some out of respect for the Mechlin. Others because they saw which way the wind was blowing. The final count took another hour. But when it was done, humanity had its seat. Not unanimously. Not with overwhelming support. But enough votes to make it legitimate. Jake Morrison did not smile. Did not celebrate. He just nodded once. We will not let you down. You better not, Krilthar said. Because the galaxy is watching. And if you fail, it will not just be humanity that pays the price. It will be everyone who trusted you. The 3 humans stood together in the center of the council chamber, covered in blood, exhausted, but victorious. They had forced their way into galactic politics through sheer determination and military success. Now came the hard part, proving they deserved to stay. It's 2. Ambassador Lyra stood up again, along with representatives from 6 other border worlds. Species that had been saved by human action started demanding that the council listen. They saved us, Lyra said loudly. While you debated, they acted. While you worried about protocols, they bled. My people owe them our lives. I vote to give them a council seat. Other ambassadors joined her. Not many, but enough to start swinging the political balance. Species that had been threatened by the Draviks recognized that humanity had done what the council could not. Jake watched the votes start to shift. He looked tired. Blood was drying on his armor, and his eyes were heavy. Next to him, Amy swayed slightly on her feet. Ben leaned against his weapon like it was the only thing keeping him upright. They had been fighting for 18 hours straight, and it showed. But they stood their ground and waited for the council to decide. The galaxy was changing whether it wanted to or not. The age of careful deliberation was ending. The age of action had begun, and it had started with 3 humans covered in blood who refused to let others die while politicians talked. Jake Morrison stepped closer to the Supreme Arbiter's platform. Security guards moved to intercept him, but he ignored them completely. He looked up at Krilthar with eyes that had seen too much death in the past day. "Here is what happens next," Jake said. "You give humanity a permanent seat on this council. Not observer status like you gave us before. Full voting rights, full military authorization. We get a real voice in how this galaxy is run." The chamber exploded. Ambassadors shouted protests. Species that had held power for centuries were not going to give it up to newcomers. Ancient alliances began arguing with each other. The carefully maintained order of the council dissolved into chaos. Jake Morrison raised his voice over all of them. "Or we leave. We pack up and go home to Earth and our colonies. And the next time someone threatens council space, you can handle it yourselves with your committees and your protocols. Good luck with that." The shouting got louder. But underneath the anger and the fear, everyone in that chamber knew one thing for certain. The galaxy had just changed. And there was no going back.